January 31st, 1929. Mail carrier in service 40 years saw Vincennes grow from village to city. Willford Reep makes final trip over a route he carried for years. Vincennes of yesterday. Oak planks for gutters, gravel street, saloons everywhere, almost as many livery stables. When 2nd Street was the main street, and Main beyond 4th didn't amount to a whole lot, mud sidewalks, when red-wheeled buggies were the berries and horses wore fly nets. Those were the memories today as Willford Reep, for 40 years, a mail carrier in Vincennes, went over his route for the last time. George Dixon will carry the route, and Reep will retire in accordance with government regulations. Reep and his wife plan to take a trip to Washington, D.C. to see Herbert Hoover inaugurated as president. Reep is a Republican, you see. That fact broke his record for continuous service, for when President Cleveland came in and went, Brother Reep, Ed Townley, and other Republican members of the Vincennes Post Office went too. Those were the days when a post office was a real political plum tree, and civil service did not protect employees in a small office from the political boot. Bill Wilmore, the postmaster, and Theodore Jackson, assistant postmaster, who keeps in the southwest corner of his desk a cigar box full of the best pipe tobacco in town, if you care for a dash, just a dash mind, of long green, were in a conference for the good of the service that afternoon. We horned in to get the story about Brother Reep. We learned a lot of things. That, for instance, we could write a story entitled From Postman to Postmaster, which could deal with the life of Bill Wilmore. For about the same time, Reep donned Uncle Sam's uniform. Wilmore also got a job in the post office. He wasn't 21, however, and he had to give up the job after a short time. There was no rural delivery in those days. Mr. Farmer didn't get his Vincennes son in the mailbox in the front yard. He had to come to town to get it. The farmer came to town about once a week to get his mail. He generally made a day of it. I used to tie up their mail in big bundles and have it ready for them. Farmers liked it so well that they wanted me to run for postmaster. Like Reep and Townsley, Miss Farrell is a Republican too. And when President Harrison was succeeded by President Cleveland, she gave way to the late Miss Frank Relter, who was then Miss Helen Holland. Miss Farrell became a candidate for state librarian, but there were about as many candidates for the nomination as there were for governor last May, and she lost out. What an interesting story Willford Reep can tell you about old Vincennes. He remembers the days when the boys not only had to carry the mail, but they had to be janitors too, after tramping all day. They had to come back to the office, wait on the window fire, the stove carry out the ashes, scrub the floors, wash the windows, sweep out and empty, yes, they chewed considerably in those days, the spittoons. Brother Reep has seen Vincennes spread from small town to a city. He has seen the passing of the fence and the gate with the vigilant watchdogs. Watchdogs, how he can remember them. Brother Reep said he could not understand why dogs had a grouch against postmen. Said that although he tried to make friends with all the dogs, it was worth his life at some places to toot his whistle. Reep used to have his dog accompany him on his route, said Coley. Averaged a fight every block. Said the dog had his bristles up and walked straight-legged the whole route and streets. Once they tried to rename the streets on his route. For instance, they changed 8th Street to Ellis and 9th to Hall, 10th to Seymour, Upper 11th to Gurney, 11th to Cochran, 12th to Camp, 13th to Walnut, and 14th to Baker. Beyond that, it was all common. And saloon, one on every corner. Sweet Adeline's and Here's How on every block. No paved streets, no sidewalks, high-stepping horses, fancy turnouts, hitch racks and cigar store Indians, Cataline Home, the Ohio and Mississippi Freight House at 2nd and Scott, where Ed Usher was agent. Brother Reep said Ed Usher was about the oldest customer he had. All those 40 years, Brother Reep has covered practically the same route. He has carried good news, unhappy news, to the same family for years. Little children who used to run out at the sound of his whistle to get the mail were now grown up and have children of their own. Here are some of the families he has served the longest. W.C. Kelly, Mr. and Mrs. C.W. Schultz, Miss Mary Dusterberg, Miss Lizzie Weissert Sinkins, the Merchant Boys, Foster and Roy, the Aker family, Miss M.C. Cathorn, Miss Manny Lee Vickens, Miss Charles Hall King, the Palma Boys, Hugo and Rudolph, Heinekamp family, the Mrs. Green, May, Sadie, and Grace, Miss Laura Heights, Miss James Thorogood, Miss Catherine Allen, the Lure family, St. Rose Academy, Miss Mary Swartzel, Mr. and Mrs. W.C. Bierhouse, Miss L.A. Meyer, J.W. Crook and family, the Kidd family, Miss W.H. Vollmer, and the William Nugent family. When Reep went into the service, Townsley was a substitute carrier. The postmaster was Captain Tyndall, who obtained his title from his years of service as a steamboat captain. Colonel Sellers was assistant postmaster. Others on the force were Bert Dubois, who carried Route 1, Fred Egler, Tom Emerson, who carried Route 3, Harrison T. Keith, number 5, Jim Harris, mailing clerk, Miss Farrell, general delivery, and Miss Smith, who was window clerk and secretary to Captain Tyndall. The accompanying picture was taken in the rear of the post office when it was located in what was the J.H. Hammond property next door to the Beer House building at 4th and Main Streets. Later, the post office was moved to the old Empire building at 2nd Busserin Street. Reep has served under 8 postmasters: Captain Tyndall, Royal E. Purcell, Thomas H. Adams, John W. Emerson, Richard Robinson, Ernie Meyer, A.C. Gurigas, and Mr. Wilmore. When Mr. Purcell went in, Reep and Townsley were dismissed. They were reinstated when Miss Adams became postmaster under President Harrison. Reep then went under civil service. Reep was off one summer when he fell out of a tree and broke his leg. In the fall, he had not fully recovered, so he was given the first horse route in Vincennes. Reep carried mail out to St. Clair Street, which was considered almost a suburb. Old-time days were also recalled by Townsley, who has carried mail in Vincennes more than 30 years. Why, the Union Depot used to be out in the country, he said. Townsley said he could remember when 2nd was really the main street of the town, with business thriving to Perry Street. Business houses were scattered all the way to Scott Street, with 4 hotels there. Stores used to open at daylight, he said, and the proprietors ran races to see how late they would remain open in the evening. He called the days when the streets used to be numbered from the river. He had a heck of a time until they made Park the dividing line. He also recalled the time when the street names were renamed. John Ham tried to get them to name First Street Ham Street beyond the park. He said some folks still call that part of First Ham Street. Townsley said that folks got plumb weary of the new names and went back to numerals. He said wide oak boards were used for curbing and that he waded mud up to his knees delivering the mail. But we had gravel street, and they were good ones, he said, indicating he walked the streets. Those 2 men have seen tremendous changes in his post office. In those days, they went to work at 6:30 in the morning and worked until late in the evening. Townsley said he has left the post office to deliver mail as late as 6 o'clock in the evening, that sometimes they made 4 or 5 deliveries. And the carriers had to put up their own mail, and there was no rural mail carriers. From the handful of men who distributed the mail 40 years prior, the force has grown to include more than 40. Where $50 a month was a salary for a postman, then the total payroll at the post office now amounts to around $90,000 a year. For clerks and carriers alone, payroll amounts to around $75,000. Rural carriers draw a total of $16,000 a year. The force now consists of 13 city carriers, 7 rural carriers, 10 clerks, a superintendent of mails, 1 special clerk, the assistant postmaster, 3 substitutes, 2 janitors, and 2 mail messengers. And the rural carriers travel something like 250 miles a day to serve 6,000 patron country. Post office has changed from just a stamp dispensary to a bank. Reep has seen the parcel post and the parcel savings develop, and the Christmas greetings and the airmail. It will probably seem strange to Reep with no route to walk after all these years, and the folks on his route will miss him, and the old mailbag that hangs on the hook probably will look plumb sad.